This is When Gen X Ruled the Multiplex, where I look at films that were in some way important to those of us who were born between 1965 and 1980. 2 episodes ago, I looked at 16 Candles, the 1984 directorial debut of the father of 80s teen cinema, John Hughes. Hughes followed that up in 1985 with The Breakfast Club, which he wrote and directed. He'd written the screenplay for The Breakfast Club first, but producers at Universal Studios felt more confident in the box office potential of 16 Candles, which is a traditional teen romp, whereas The Breakfast Club, which features only a small handful of characters in a single setting, is less conventional. The success of 16 Candles paved the way for The Breakfast Club, which is a good thing, because The Breakfast Club is the superior film, and has certainly been more influential upon those of us who were children or teens in 1985. The Breakfast Club opens with maximum bombast with the Simple Minds hit Don't You Forget About Me playing over lyrics from David Bowie's Changes, which are emblazoned across a black screen, which then shatters into pieces. This is our first indication that The Breakfast Club is going to be very, very dramatic. We find ourselves at Shermer High School in the fictional upper-middle-class Chicago suburb of Shermer, Illinois. Popular teen Claire, played by Molly Ringwald, whom we just saw in 16 Candles, is dropped off at school by her doting father. It's Saturday morning, and Claire has all-day detention, which she earned by skipping class to go shopping. A brainy kid named Brian, played by Ringwald's 16 Candles co-star Anthony Michael Hall, is harangued by his angry mother, who is played by Hall's real-life mother, Mercedes Hall. Brian's mom pressures him to use his detention time to his advantage, even though he's not allowed to do any studying. The third arrival is varsity wrestling star Andrew, played by Emilio Estevez, whom we have seen in Repo Man and St. Elmo's Fire. It's not yet revealed why Andrew is in detention, but it's clear Andrew's father is mostly upset that his son got caught, as a black mark on his record could endanger his college prospects. Bad boy Bender, played by Judd Nelson, arrives at the school alone and on foot, while eccentric proto-goth weirdo Allison, played by Nelson's St. Elmo's Fire co-star Ally Sheedy, whom we also saw in War Games, wordlessly gets out of her parents' car. All 5 students assemble in the school library. Bender intimidates Brian into giving him his seat, while popular kids Andrew and Claire sit together. Vice Principal Vernon, played by the late Paul Gleason, whom we recently saw in Die Hard, addresses the group. They've got 9 hours of detention, during which there will be no talking and no moving from their seats. Their only task is to write an essay of a minimum of 1,000 words describing who they think they are. Vernon, who is unrelentingly abrasive and unlikable, gives them each a pencil and a single sheet of lined notebook paper, and I can see an immediate flaw in his plan. Unless your penmanship is teensy, you would be hard-pressed to fit 1,000 handwritten words on a single sheet of paper. From this early introduction to the characters, it's clear that Bender is mouthy, obnoxious, and argumentative. Allison is largely nonverbal, but has a lot of eccentric tics. Andrew and Claire are smug and self-righteous. And Brian is socially awkward and prone to bouts of verbal diarrhea. Bender steals a screw from the library door so Vernon can't prop it open to keep an eye on them, then promptly smart-mouths his way into an additional 2 months of Saturday morning detention. Left largely unsupervised, the deeply bored students engage in some sterling examples of time wasting. Bender lights his shoe on fire, Brian tries to hide an ill-timed boner, Andrew plays with his hoodie string, and Allison uses her single sheet of paper to sketch a nice covered bridge, then creates a snowstorm on it by sprinkling it with her dandruff. Bender, who is the catalyst for all kinds of shenanigans, specifically targets Claire for harassment. Andrew almost comes to blows with Bender, while Brian ineffectually tries to play peacemaker. In the middle of all this, the school janitor Carl, played by John Kapelos, whom we just saw in 16 Candles, arrives to clean the library. The kids act pretty snotty and elitist towards him because this film is very aware that teenagers are sometimes awful. Originally, Hughes cast Rick Moranis in the part of Carl, but Moranis wanted to play the character in a very broad and zany way, complete with a Russian accent, which didn't really fit with the film's very serious and grounded look at high school. Lunch break arrives, and Vernon tasks Andrew and Allison with getting soft drinks from the vending machine in the teacher's lounge for everyone. When Allison asks Andrew why he's in detention, he responds with some self-involved babble about how everyone at the school treats him with special care because he's an athlete, which fails to impress her or answer her question. Back in the library, Brian implies to Bender that he has slept with Claire, which Bender finds wildly improbable. Put on the spot by an outraged Claire, a mortified Brian confesses to Bender and Claire that he's still a virgin. Claire brings sushi for lunch. Because it's 1985, everyone treats this like it's a very weird and exotic thing for her to do. though at least no one tops it with peanut butter as they did in Valley Girl. For his lunch, Andrew brings all the food in the world in a giant grocery sack, which I find very charming and relatable. Allison sprinkles her pimento loaf sandwich with pixie sticks and Captain Crunch, and Bender steals Brian's sensible and nutritious lunch of soup, apple juice, and a peanut butter sandwich. Bender, who is filled with drama, does a mocking reenactment of what he thinks life is like in Brian's upper-middle-class home, and then he does a reenactment of his own home life with his violent and abusive father, complete with cigar burns on his forearm. Out of boredom, Bender leads the entire gang on a secret excursion out of the library to get his stash of weed out of his locker. On the way back, they almost get caught by Vernon, so they scamper through the hallways while Fire in the Twilight by Wang Chung plays. The very first concert I ever went to without parental supervision was Wang Chung. They reach a dead end, so Bender rather nobly creates a distraction by running through the halls belting out an airborne ranger cadence to draw Vernon's attention while the others safely make it back to the library. Vernon locks Bender in a storage closet and taunts and berates him in a scene that makes it clear that Vernon is a power-mad bully at heart. Bender promptly escapes via the ceiling crawlspace and crashes back through the ceiling into the library. When Vernon returns to the library to check on the commotion, the others protect Bender from him, even when Bender, hiding under Claire's skirt, does something unspecified but certainly wildly inappropriate to her crotch. The gang gets high on Bender's stash, which leads to an acrobatic Andrew doing an energetic solo dance routine. Vernon snoops through confidential files and is caught and blackmailed by Carl. Vernon and Carl end up talking about their failed dreams. Vernon expresses his horror that today's kids, all of whom he finds unfathomable and appalling, will be running the country someday. Carl has a more generous outlook, noting that, as a group, teenagers really don't change that much from generation to generation. Allison implies that her home life isn't that great, and Andrew tries to be a sympathetic listener. She's defensive and argumentative at first, but finally confesses that she's ignored by her parents, which strikes a chord with Andrew. Their emotional barriers now relaxed due to the weed and to their united front against Vernon, the kids all bond together, sharing their deepest confessions. Claire is tricked into confessing that she's still a virgin. Andrew has an emotional breakdown while confessing that he duct-taped an unpopular teammate's butt cheeks together in a weird and somewhat sociopathic attempt to impress his dad. Brian confesses that his parents put him under so much pressure to get good grades that he took a shop class hoping to pad out his report card with an easy A, but he's failing it. Now that they've all shared their deepest secrets, Brian wonders what will happen back at school on Monday. Claire cynically tells him they'll probably all ignore each other. This leads to a lot of wild emoting and nostril flaring from Bender, and a lot of complaining from Claire about how none of them understand the pressures of being popular. Brian puts a stop to all this nonsense by breaking down into tears, explaining that he's in detention because he brought a flare gun to school to kill himself. Allison tops them all by confessing that she's in detention voluntarily because she had nothing better to do with her Saturday. All the kids engage in a big exuberant dance party to We Are Not Alone by Carla DeVito. Afterward, Bender sneaks back through the crawl space to the storage closet. Claire asks Brian to write one essay for all 5 of them, which A is a huge cheat, and B is terribly unfair to poor Brian. Claire gives Allison a makeover, which has the unfortunate result of making Allison seem 1,000,000 times less interesting. Claire then sneaks off to the storage closet to snuggle with Bender. Back in the library, Allison dazzles Andrew with her newly homogenized beauty, and Brian does what can only be considered a spectacularly half-assed job of writing the essay. Fair enough, Brian. It wasn't cool of the others to make you do it all on your own, so they really can't complain if you don't really do the assignment. All Don't You Forget About Me strikes up again, detention concludes, and everyone leaves. As the kids are picked up by their parents, including a quick cameo by John Hughes as Brian's dad, Claire kisses Bender and gives him one of her diamond earrings, which he slips in his own earlobe. Back at the library, Vernon reads Brian's rebellious essay, which comes in at considerably less than 1,000 words, and which makes the point that while they each superficially represent a teen archetype, the jock, the princess, the brain, the criminal in the basket case, at their core they're more alike than different. It ends with an image of Bender striding across the athletic field, raising a fist in rebellious triumph. One of the reasons why The Breakfast Club has become such a touchstone of Gen X-themed pop culture is that it understood teenagers. It's a very, very earnest film, and it takes itself very, very seriously. But you know what? It mostly works. The script is good, featuring John Hughes' signature knack for recreating the way teenagers talk. The film features talented and well-cast young actors who seem like real teens. The 5 principal characters are self-involved, self-pitying, and disaffected, and they have no idea yet who they are. As was fairly common with young Gen Xers, their worldview is pretty nihilistic. As much as these kids dislike their parents, they feel doomed to grow up to become their parents. This is a pretty unsparing look at 80s teens, though there are indications that the events of the film have caused them to grow up a little and lose some of that self-absorption. For instance, at the beginning of Detention, they all behave pretty badly towards the janitor, Carl. Brian is clearly something of a friend to Carl, though he's too embarrassed to acknowledge that friendship in front of the other kids. Bender outright mocks Carl's profession, while the others pretend Carl doesn't exist. In other words, they all behave like little snots, which of course real teenagers often are. At the end, though, as they're leaving the library, they all very naturally exchange goodbyes with Carl. It's clear they see him as a real person now, just as they see each other as real people, and not just as a jock, a princess, a brain, a basket case, and a criminal. The Breakfast Club was a critical and commercial success, even though its appeal is pretty specifically geared towards and limited to teenagers. Watching it as an adult, it doesn't entirely hold up, and it certainly doesn't strike the same resonant emotional chords it did with me when I first saw it, but it's not designed for 47-year-olds. It was designed to make Gen X teens feel like somebody understands them, and because of that, it's a film many of us remember with great fondness. Its poster has been recreated and affectionately parodied for films ranging from Spider-Man: Homecoming to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and for the TV series Riverdale. John Singleton cited The Breakfast Club as an influence on his acclaimed directorial debut, Boys in the Hood. Robert Rodriguez's 1998 alien invasion horror flick The Faculty sneaks in a Breakfast Club homage in a particularly sly and cool way. Out of the Faculty's 6 teenage protagonists, one is a jock, one is a princess, one is a brain, one is a basket case, one is a criminal, and the only one who doesn't have a direct Breakfast Club parallel is revealed at the climax to be a killer alien in disguise. The ending of The Breakfast Club isn't as much of a sentimental wish fulfillment fantasy as the ending of 16 Candles, and that's part of what makes it a better film. When Monday morning comes, we don't really know what's going to happen to these 5 students. We don't know if Claire and Bender will be a couple, or if Allison and Andrew will start dating, or if they'll remain friends, or if they'll even acknowledge the existence of each other. It seems likely that, come Monday, everything will be reset back to the original status quo. But there's at least a faint optimism that now they know they're less alone in the strange and often isolating world of 1980s high school. Next time, we are going to the far-off future, to the strange world of 2019, with Ridley Scott's imaginative and influential sci-fi epic Blade Runner. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to see you then.